Have you ever said the words, I can understand it when people speak English, but I can't speak? Now, I've been a teacher for nearly 15 years and I've helped thousands of students on their journey towards mastering English, to mastering British English, a modern British RP accent, and learning a bit about British culture. And over that time, I've heard these words just far too often, in my opinion. So, why? Why do you feel this way? Well, first of all, I suppose I should introduce myself. My name is Roy, if you've not been here before. My name is Roy. I'm a British English teacher, and welcome to this channel. And what we're going to do over the next few lessons is really give you some top tips to help you on your journey to not only mastering the language, but also overcoming some of those obstacles. And in this one, I wanted to talk about these words. So let me talk about myself. Now, I can honestly say that I have made more mistakes in English than you have probably had hot dinners. Sorry, I don't know how many hot dinners you've had, but that's a good expression. But I have made more mistakes in English than you ever will. And you might be thinking, well, hang on a minute, you're a native English speaker. How is this possible? Well, sometimes we get tongue tied. Sometimes things don't come out right. Sometimes you can even forget a word. You can get flustered. You can just sort of need to take a breath. And that's what we're going to talk about. And also, I've had the experience of learning a second language. I have learnt Portuguese. I speak Portuguese. I speak Brazilian Portuguese because my wife is from Brazil. And we lived in Brazil for 3 years. And I made so many mistakes in Portuguese that I could make you feel so much better. So, what is it about mistakes, and why did this statement come? I can understand it when people speak English, but I can't speak. Well, usually it's because of fear. Now, a lot of students, in my opinion, they get scared. They get scared of making a mistake. Now, somewhere along the line, we were told that making mistakes was wrong. Now, let's talk about children. I've got a child. He's 6 years old. He's wonderful, and he makes plenty of mistakes. But it's part of the learning process. He makes a mistake and he learns from it. Well, hopefully, you kind of hope you learn from it, but sometimes, sometimes you need to reinforce. This is how we do that, not like this. But mistakes are a natural part of the process. It's a natural part of our journey, and this is kind of a thing that I want to sort of talk about now. Fear. At some point, you lose that kind of childlike innocence towards making mistakes, and at some point mistakes become a really bad thing. But what if we go back to that kind of frame of mind where we think, well, hang on a minute, making mistakes is just part of the process. It's a natural part of our development. There's a wonderful bit. I know this is a bit off topic, but there's a wonderful bit from the film. I think it's Batman Begins, where Michael Caine, who plays Alfred the butler, says, "Why do we fall down, Mr. Wayne? To learn how to pick ourselves up. Why do we fall down? To learn how to pick ourselves up." That's a kind of very childlike reference, isn't it? A reference to childhood. Like this idea that you fall over and then you learn to pick yourself up and then eventually you stop falling over. So we make mistakes every single day. This is part of the process. But what can happen is if you let fear dominate your mindset, you get scared, certain things happen. So we stop trying to communicate. We start, avoiding the mistakes rather than kind of enjoying them in a certain way. And then, one mistake on a certain day may lead to another mistake. So what happens there? Well, quite commonly, if you make a mistake, you start to feel a bit tense. Or maybe something you say, it didn't land. The person didn't understand. They're like, what? Sorry, I didn't understand. There's a complete miscommunication. Now, the first thing I find with students is they often make it about themselves. They make it about themselves. Oh my goodness, it must be my English that maybe the person wasn't listening. Maybe the person has other things on their mind. But not everything is your fault. That's the first thing to remember. I mean, of course, there could be a miscommunication because you mispronounce a word. I don't know. There's multiple reasons, but it's not always your fault. And then the first thing that happens after that initial mistake, you start to. Quite often, I find people speeding up. They go and they sort of stumble their words. So if the first time they say, "Excuse me, what time does the train leave?" And the person goes, "Sorry, what? The train. What time does the train leave?" And it gets more and more tense. There is a tension. One mistake usually leads to another mistake and another mistake because you don't give yourself time. That's the thing. Mistakes, they tend to snowball. This expression, snowball, things getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So how do we counteract that? Well, whenever I make a mistake, and I've made loads of mistakes in Portuguese and English in lots of different ways, the first thing I do is take a breath, compose. So if I say something like, "What time does the train leave?" Or maybe I say it wrong, and "What time is the train left?" And then the person says, "Sorry," and you say, "Sorry, what time does the train leave?" Slow it down. Take time. But the first thing you need to remember after you've taken that composure, after you've taken that breath, is first of all, forgive yourself. Forgive yourself. That's the first thing. Don't punish yourself. Don't feel tense. Don't feel bad about making mistakes. This is the most important advice I could give you. Don't feel bad about the mistakes. It's a wonderful part of the process. It is a joyful part of the process. I'm going to give you some real examples soon. And that's the first thing you need to remember. Just forgive yourself, because everybody makes mistakes. Everybody, even native speakers in their own language. This is completely normal. Forgive yourself, compose yourself, and then try again. And remember that sometimes you're just going to have a bad day. That's the truth. This journey of learning language, if we were perfect every single day, then you wouldn't really appreciate it as much. So we have bad days and we have good days. We have bad days when nothing seems to come out right and you just think, right, I'm going to give up. I'm going home. I'm done. Fine. But forgive yourself and try again. Resilience is the key. And it's not just about language, but obviously I'm a British English teacher and I'm talking about language. So, but this goes across the board. Anything you want to learn. I don't know, if you want to learn to play badminton, you'll have good days, you'll have bad days. But you have good days as well. And that's a wonderful thing. And the first piece of advice I would give you is make a chart of good days and bad days and neutral days. Maybe give them colors. Bad days, maybe green. Don't go with red. It looks like an angry color, I guess. Bad days, green, or good days, blue, or whatever colors you want to do. And a orange day is neutral. And then check out on the calendar how many good days and how many bad days you've had over the month. And steadily, I imagine that you will grow those number of good days. The bad days will decrease as you learn more and more of the language and you get comfortable and you start to forgive yourself and you realize, fine, mistakes are natural. But then again, as well, you might be a perfectionist and then your standards go up. So actually, sometimes it maintains, but it doesn't mean you're not progressing. It doesn't mean you're not growing. Maybe just your standards of what you want to achieve, what you think is a good day, is also growing. So don't punish yourself, forgive yourself, and move on with the process. Like I said, I've made more mistakes than you ever will. Now, I just put an edit here. You might have noticed there was a cut of an edit, and that's because I completely forgot what I was saying. I had to compose myself, and the time took quite a few seconds, so I decided to cut it. But I wanted to be honest, I just made a mistake there. I forgot what I was saying. But when we talk about good days and bad days, it kind of reminds me of a poem, If, by Rudyard Kipling. He talks about if you meet those triumph and disaster. He talks about triumph and disaster, success and failure, and treat those two imposters just the same. It's a wonderful kind of lesson to help you on your journey towards learning a language. This idea that, a good day is not real and a bad day is also not real. It kind of happens. So you kind of move on. But the thing I would say as well is just learn to trust the process. This is not an instantaneous thing. I often used to joke with my students, if I could put a USB stick in my head, might be possible in a few years, who knows? But if I could put a USB stick in my head, download my English and put it into yours, I'll charge you, a few £1,000s, and then off you go, instantaneous English. That's not how the world works. That's not how we work as human beings. It is a process, and you need to trust that process. And mistakes are a key point of those things. Take it with a childlike kind of point of view. Look at that and go, I've made a few mistakes, but that's fine. And the final piece of advice, not only would I say, compose, try again, be resilient, accept there are good days and accept there are bad days, but probably the most important thing I could help you with and say in this one, especially when you're talking about UK culture, is learn to laugh at yourself. I promised you I'm going to teach you talk about a few real examples of my own. Okay, I'm going to tell you some about when I was learning Portuguese. But learn to laugh at yourself. Now, sometimes if somebody makes a mistake, like I had a student on social media, I'm going to teach this lesson today or tomorrow, about the word focus. focus. And obviously, this student was saying focus, but it was coming out a bit more like something else that would get me banned on YouTube, so or Spotify or whatever, wherever you're listening to this or watching this. But focus could sound like I'm trying not to say the words, the F word, the very bad English word, the swear word, the F word, and us. So if you mispronounce that vowel in the first syllable, particularly, it could sound like something very bad. Now, this person said on social media that the boss kept laughing when they said it. Okay, that's fine. If you laugh with somebody, laughing with somebody is like sharing the joke. Laughing at can be a bit more damaging. So what happens if we allow this kind of damage to build over time? Well, I find students tend to go one of two ways. The first way they go is if they kind of just allow the mistakes to dominate their life, if they allow to almost put fear into their mind, because fear is such a powerful emotion, isn't it? Fear is such a powerful emotion. This is one thing I see on social media a lot. People saying, oh, you won't blah, 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 do this, do that, do this. If you don't do this, you will do this. This kind of thing is using fear. And we should be talking about love. In my opinion, we should love. Love yourself. Love yourself. Love your mistakes. Love your language process. Love, and know that not everybody's the same. And there was another moment where I had to really compose myself. So there's another edit just to prove I make mistakes, guys. Okay, so we're going to talk about laughing at yourself momentarily. But first of all, let's talk about what happens to somebody if they allow the fear to dominate their lives, if they allow this fear of making mistakes, if they allow this negativity to sort of take over. Well, first thing is that they go one of two ways. First thing is somebody usually becomes quite depressed. They become quite quiet. They become quite insular. It starts to make them shrink. They become a smaller version of themselves. If you imagine a person almost becoming shorter and smaller, that's what can happen if somebody allows the mistakes, the fear of mistakes, to dominate their lives. And the second thing that can happen is that they become angry. This is another emotion, a common emotion, being scared, being sort of depressed and shrinking, or becoming angry, almost thinking it's not me, it's you, and this is a rubbish, I don't like this, become angry with the language, become angry with the people that don't understand. And those are two emotions. Sometimes people experience both, and sometimes it's a kind of journey through both until eventually it becomes an almost resignation to this status that they will never learn, that they will always understand what people say, but they'll never be able to speak. They won't be able to get their words out, or they won't understand when people are using connected speech. That becomes a block, a permanent block. And it's usually a process through shrinking and anger, or a combination of both. So, like I said, the most important things you can do is forgive your mistakes. In fact, love your mistakes. Also, learn to kind of compose yourself afterwards. See it as a journey. See it as a process. Good days, bad days, neither are really real, but eventually you're going to have many more good days than bad days. And sometimes your standards will change where you expect the good days to get even bigger. And I'm going to tell you about my classic mistake towards the end of this lesson. Another quick cut there. But the final lesson, I would say, is that, like I say, learn to laugh at your mistakes. Learn to enjoy them. So it's not a case of somebody laughing at you, because that can make you very sort of negative towards people if you feel like they're laughing at your mistakes. Maybe sometimes, especially in British culture, they'll be trying to include you in the joke. Like, do you know what that sounds like? This kind of thing. We have a quite that kind of sense of humor. It's a way of communicating for us. So learn to laugh at yourself. And that does two things. First of all, you're going to see those mistakes as not being threatening, not being a bad thing. You're going to see it as a kind of the process. Fine. And they're funny. Some of the mistakes are funny. I'm going to tell you a funny one in a moment. But also, if you laugh at yourself, if you learn to laugh at yourself, you take the power away from the person, from another person. Nobody else can ever make you feel bad about your English. If you learn to laugh, or whatever you're doing, nobody can ever take anything away from you if you can laugh at yourself, because no matter how much they laugh at you, you can always say, it takes the power away from the person. Now, I promised I was going to talk about one of my mistakes. I've made a few during this podcast, or this lesson that I've edited out, and I've been honest about it. I wanted you to know that, because there's one thing I think out there is that there are far too many social media posts, far too many things of people that have overly edited them to the point where they're perfect, and that doesn't show you the real thing. Because in the classroom, you don't have the chance to edit. So I want this to be more like the real classroom. Of course, if there's a a 20-second moment when I start sneezing. Then I'm going to cut that, but I'll be honest. That's something. But the thing I was going to say, when I was learning Portuguese for the first time, um, I was starting out and I moved to Brazil. There was a word that I always remember: excited. Excited. Now, in English, excited means very, very happy. I'm really, really happy. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be talking with you today. And of course, Portuguese also has a similar word, and it's pronounced excitado. Excitado. I used to say excitado because I put that excitado, but I say excitado. Estou excitado. And in Portuguese, it means something a little bit different. It's commonly related to sexual excitement, sexual arousal. And I remember meeting my wife's grandparents for the first time. The first time I ever met them. And I said, estou muito excitado, excitado. I couldn't get the word out. Excitado para encontrar você. Something like this. It was a bit jumbled, and I'd really practiced this expression. I'd really practiced to kind of impress them. And the faces of all of them. my wife's grandparents, my wife was like, oh no. And then my wife's grandfather, he was a lovely man. He laughed, he chuckled because he found it funny, because he understood what I tried to do. And I laughed as well because therefore I enjoyed the moment. I enjoyed the mistake. I just told my wife's grandparents I was really sexually aroused to meet them. Ridiculous. She's laughing right next to me. She's laughing right now, and it's a true story. The other thing I did as well, because Britain, the UK, we don't tend to have a kissing culture. We don't tend to kiss on the cheeks that much when we greet people. Brazil does. Brazil does. So, for example, they'll kiss. Some states in Brazil have 1 kiss, 2 kisses, 3 kisses. I don't know. Some never seem to finish. But in Brazil, it's more common for a man and a woman to kiss rather than a man and a man. Whereas I know in certain parts of Italy, men kiss on the cheeks as well. So I saw everybody doing this kind of kissing thing on the cheek. And the first time, just after I said, I am sexually aroused to see you, accidentally in Portuguese, I went up to my wife's grandfather and I kissed him on the cheek. And you know what? He kissed me back. He made me feel inclusive. Later on, they told me that was not the culture, but he kind of just gave me a kiss on the cheek, probably because he thought it was my culture as well. And I think that that's a lovely thing. We did that a few times, actually, until somebody told me. But he embraced me the same way. And I think that that's absolutely lovely. So what I'm going to say is this lesson has it's been all about kind of how to overcome those obstacles of, I can understand English, but I can't speak it. You can speak it. Don't let fear dominate your process. And the best thing I can ever say to you is trust the process. Trust the process. There are good days. There are bad days. Just trust the process and you will get there. But don't give up and don't let fear dominate your learning or any part of your life. I hope that's been useful. I don't know who needed to hear that. But lots of love to you all, and I'll see you in the next lesson.